So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the second identity, right? So we're on an identity pilgrimage. Everything's building off each other for the most part. What I want to say, brothers, is last week, right? We talked about being a son, right? We are sons of the Father. Jesus takes us to that holy place of his baptism and the gift of the desert to just receive so deeply the gift of being a beloved son of the Father. And the Father delights in us, right? Though maybe the one takeaway of just this posture of trust and dependence, right? Receiving everything from a good Father and fighting for that place of truth, right? We talked about a lot of stories of just of fighting for our sonship and letting the Father just continually take care of us and bless us, right? So we don't graduate from this place, right? This is super important that you don't, this is not like a ladder or just like, okay, we're done with this step. Now we're going to go on to the next natural kind of identity, which we're going to talk about is brotherhood. Brothers, this is the foundation of the house, right? And so for our listeners, we constantly have to reinforce this foundation. And this is what I probably want to say is, this is what our personal prayer looks like every day. I think we go to prayer as sons, right? And so this is every day we're coming into contact with our sonship. And so we are sons of a good Father who loves us and cares for us. And from this place every day, we are sent out to take that love to others, right? So this natural kind of movement or momentum leads us to live the commandments fully, like love God and love your neighbor. When the scholar of the law asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? He says, love God with your whole heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, right? So Father Montgomery, if you could say a little bit, this is your line. I take lines from you all the time, but our Christian call is not just about me and Jesus. Maybe firstly, but it's not just me. Like, okay, I'm me and Jesus, and that's fine. But it is demanding.
Yeah, and I think actually applies very well to Lent for us. As I was talking with one of the guys the other day, and I meet with a couple of them on a regular basis and kind of talk about what the Lord's doing. And so there's like a word, and so they'll share kind of like the word the Lord's speaking, and then like what that means. And then often it's like, okay, here's what the Lord's saying in prayer. Here's what I'm doing for Lectio. And then it's like, and then here's how it translates in the apostolate. So here's how I experienced this with the poor, and here's what the Lord's saying here and there, and here's how it all relates. And what doesn't come necessarily as naturally and is part of what we're trying to kind of form in them is I'll always ask the question, okay, so how does this speak into your relationship with your brothers? How does this relate to them, right? Because there's still, for most of us, there is a tendency for us to have our spiritual life be, okay, me and Jesus, here's me and him in our prayer, and here's what he's saying, and here's what I'm doing at Holy Hour, here's what I'm doing at meditation, this and that, here's what I'm trying to do for him. And then it's like, okay, and then here's my mission, here's what I'm trying to do for these people out there, whatever it is. It's like, but an essential component that we can't overlook is, what does this mean for you and those who you're in community with, right? What does this mean for you and the brothers? What does this mean for you and your family? What does this mean for you and it can be your coworkers, whoever it is that you're like really walking with. Because in my opinion, that's actually, and in some way, I don't want to say it's like it's an essential part. I use the example, and I don't want to use it again, but I'm going to use it again because I can't think of another one. It's like, right, this idea of like when you're creating, like you're making a sword, you put the steel in the forge, right, and it gets super hot, and that's prayer, and you got to be bringing yourself to the Lord, and that's where it gets hot. But like the hammer blows, that which actually forms it is actually going to be your community. It's going to be the people you're living life with, and I am just so convinced that we can't over speak about the importance of learning and staying in communion and staying in community.